Well, good morning, y'all. Whoa, I don't know what the stand is doing. It's kind of leaning one way. Oh, my goodness. There we go. Welcome to Tuesday, May 26th edition of Quarantining with Pastor Michelle. Do hope all of you are doing as well as possible. Let me get, yes, I get real with you all because I just got some eye boogies out of my eye. All right, so let's start with a few words of reflection, shall we? You can't test your courage timidly. You have to run through the fire, arms waving, legs pumping, and heart beating wildly with the effort of reclaiming something vital, lost, laid aside, or just plain forgotten. When you do that, you discover that we shine most brightly in community. The whole bedraggled, worn, frayed, and tattered lot of us, bound together forever by a shared courage. A family forged in the heat of earnest struggle. Life is a series of passageways we choose largely on faith and a healthy dose of hope. We hope that the hallway of our choosing leads us to magic. The inexplicable, the sudden, the uncontained, not so that we can capture it, hold it, make it our own, but just hope. But just so that we can feel it, even for an instant. Feel it and know the truth that the universe itself is magic. Hope that by our believing, our blind trust, our inherent innocence, someday, sometime, somewhere, that magic will become us, even fleetingly, and we touch the face of God. That's good. That's nice. Time is an ocean, present and eternal. We are adrift on that ocean of possibility, you and I, and the miracle is that we find each other at all. Maybe it's age that keeps me scanning the horizon, looking for you, waving, bobbing in that sustaining current, because I want to hold eternal moments closer now. We move through time and space separately, and the mystery of our meeting is time's gift to us. Swim with me now. We have no other chance. And so that is beautiful. I especially like, life is a series of passageways. We choose largely on faith and hope. And certainly now more than ever, we need hope. While we are still going through a pandemic. And so things are crazy right now. But I do hope that all of you are staying as safe as possible and making wise decisions. So let us start with some prayer. Our Father and Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And let's just take a deep breath. Let in all the good and let out all the bad. So I prayed a little slower because I wanted to give you some CNN good stuff, the good news. So here's our good news story of the day. When the going gets tough, the band plays on. Plano Senior High School's senior concert was canceled, the last casualty of a truncated school year. But the Texas school band's directors couldn't let the graduates go out without fanfare. So over one weekend, the trio of directors traveled nearly 170 miles across Texas to reunite with all 85 of their senior band students. For 15 minutes, they stand in the road and play the school fight song while the students watched from a safe distance. Band director Jason Lewis, who handled the French horn while his co-directors played percussion and saxophone, said that the traveling concert was a musical show of their love for their graduates. It was a gift to our seniors. Can you still play a French horn when it's full of salty tears? That was what the CNN writer wrote. But that's great. And there's so many stories of that where teachers, where other things for school have traveled the distance to principals. There was that one story we shared that one week where that one principal traveled to every single one of the seniors, I believe, houses. I mean, that's a lot of traveling. And, I thought about what it would look like to travel to every one of my church members' house, but I don't know if I'm going to make it to do that. That would be a little bit much. But I am doing what I can to have safe distance visits with some of our members and just check in with them. And that's been nice. just seeing them face to face, it's a different thing than just sending a card or emailing them. So I do hope that you are having some good news in the midst of all the bad news. I hope that the good outweighs the bad always. So today our woman of the day is Helen Beatrix Potter. So Helen was born in 1866 into a wealthy family in London. Her artistic parents, Rupert and Helen, encouraged Beatrix and her younger brother to draw and paint their many pets. They had rabbits, lizards, mice, hedgehogs, tortoises, snakes, frogs, and even a bat. Although they lived in London, the family also spent a lot of time in the north of England and Scotland, and they all loved the countryside. Beatrix's father realized that she had a special talent for drawing and painting. When she was very young, he took her on trips to museums and galleries and introduced her to his artist friends. By the time she was 8, she had filled stacks of notebooks with her drawings. Although she had an art teacher, Beatrix mostly taught herself to paint, copying from paintings and books and expeditions. As a teenager, her favorite pets were 2 rabbits, Benjamin Bounder and Peter Piper, who followed her around on leashes and did clever tricks. Many of her early paintings were of these 2 beloved bunnies. She also created incredibly accurate paintings of plants, and she especially loved to draw Cinderella. Some of her favorite childhood stories. One of her first stories was about a mischievous bunny called Peter Rabbit. She wrote the tale for a little boy named Noel, who was the son of her favorite former governess, Annie Moore. She tried to get it published many times, but no one wanted to make her story into a book. So she published it herself. She gave it to family and friends. When they saw the finished book, the publisher, Frederick Warne, changed their minds and asked her to illustrate it in color. She did, and it was an instant success. So she quickly went on to create more books about Peter Rabbit and his friends. Beatrix fell in love with her editor, Norman Warne, but just after they became engaged, he suddenly died of leukemia. Beatrix was heartbroken, but she found great happiness in nature, especially in the Lake District. She eventually wrote and illustrated 28 books and designed the first ever Peter Rabbit toy. The world's favorite bunny was also the first character from a children's story to become a brand beyond the book. She was passionate about protecting nature, so she eventually bought 15 farms around the Lake District. Her favorite farm was called Hilltop, and it became the setting for many of her books. I think Hilltop is on Walking Dead, too. Working closely with the National Trust, she helped to stop people who wanted to buy and build on the beautiful wilderness land. During this time, she married William Heelis, a lawyer whom she met through her environmental work, and they lived happily together for many years. Not only did she help preserve nature, she also helped improve the lives of people living near her home, bringing more nurses to the area. She loved to work on her farms, wearing muddy clogs and a shawl and helping with the haymaking and sheep. Beatrix died in 1943, leaving over 4,000 acres of land to the National Trust. Beatrix is one of the world's best-loved children's authors and illustrators, and her timeless creations have entertained and delighted millions of children and adults for more than 100 years. Not only talented but generous as well, she worked hard to save the beautiful natural world she loved. Over 2 million copies of her book are sold every year. That's around 4 books every minute, making children's book illustration into a respectable and desirable career. Her work paved the way for countless authors, illustrators, and stories to come. And so there she is, and there is some of her books. I don't know if it was her. Here's some quotes. Thank goodness I was never sent to school. It would have rubbed off some of the originality. She says there's something delicious about writing the first words of a story. You never know quite where they'll take you. We cannot stay home all our lives. We must present ourselves to the world, and we must look upon it as an adventure. So there are some of her books right there. And so that is our woman of the day. Tomorrow will be a fun one. Tomorrow, our woman of the day will be Coco Chanel. So I think it was Beatrix Potter. They used to have a set of books by her. I think I own that, but I can't remember. But it is amazing to hear about these strong women, isn't it? So let's continue on with Hunger Games, speaking of strong women, and continue to hear about Katniss and Peeta. And so at last time on Hunger Games, just to catch you up, Peeta and Katniss are on their way to the capital. And right now, Katniss is in the middle of dreaming about what things may be like at her house. as they're traveling along. Imagining my home makes me ache with loneliness. This day has been endless. Could Gail and I have been eating blackberries only this morning? It seems like a lifetime ago, like a long dream that deteriorated into a nightmare. Maybe if I go to sleep, I will wake up back in District 12 where I belong. Probably the drawers hold any number of nightgowns, but I just strip off my shirt and pants and climb into bed in my underwear. The sheets are made of soft, silky fabric. A thick, fluffy comforter gives immediate warmth. If I'm going to cry, now is the time to do it. By morning, I'll be able to wash the damage done by the tears from my face, but no tears come. I'm too tired or too numb to cry. The only thing I feel is a desire to be somewhere else. So I let the train rock me into oblivion. Gray light is leaking through the curtains when the rapping rouses me. I hear Effie Trinket's voice calling me to rise. Up, up, up. It's going to be a big, big day. I try to imagine for a moment what it must be like inside that woman's head. What thoughts fill her waking hours. What dreams come to her at night. I have no idea. I put the green outfit back on since it's not really dirty, just slightly crumpled from spending the night on the floor. My fingers trace a circle around the little gold mockingjay, and I think of the woods and my father and my mother and Prim waking up, having to get on with things. I slept in the elaborate braided hair my mother did for the reaping, and it doesn't look so bad. So I just leave it up. It doesn't matter. We can't be far from the capital now, and once we reach the city, my stylist will dictate my look for the opening ceremonies tonight anyway. I just hope I get one who doesn't think nudity is the last word in fashion. As I enter the dining car, Effie Trinket brushes by me with a cup of black coffee. She's muttering obscenities under her breath. Hey Mitch, his face puffy and red from the previous day's indulgences, is chuckling. Peter holds a roll and looks somewhat embarrassed. Sit down, says Hamish, waving me over. The moment I slide into my chair, I'm served an enormous platter of food. Eggs, ham, piles of fried potatoes, a turn of fruit sits in ice to keep it chilled. The basket of rolls they set before me would keep my family going for a week. There's an elegant glass of orange juice. At least I think it's orange juice. I've only even tasted an orange once at New Year's when my father bought one as a special treat. A cup of coffee. My mother adores coffee, which we could almost never afford, but it only tastes bitter and thin to me. A rich brown cup of something I've never seen. They call it hot chocolate, says Peta. It's good. I take a sip of the hot, sweet, creamy liquid, and a shudder runs through me. Even though the rest of the meal beckons, I ignore it until I've drained my cup. Then I stuff down every mouthful I can hold, which is a substantial amount, being careful to not overdo it on the richest stuff. One time my mother told me that I always eat like I'll never see food again, and I said I won't unless I bring it home. That shut her up. When my stomach feels like it's about to split open, I lean back and take in my breakfast companions. Peta is still eating, breaking off bits of roll and dipping them in hot chocolate. Hey Mitch hasn't paid any attention to his platter, but he's knocking back a glass of red juice that he keeps thinning with a clear liquid from a bottle. Judging by the fumes, it's some kind of spirit. I don't know Haymitch, but I've seen him often enough in the hub, tossing handfuls of money on the counter of the woman who sells white liquor. He'll be incoherent by the time we reach the capital. I realize I detest Haymitch. No wonder the District 12 tributes never stand a chance. It's just that we've been underfed and lack training. It isn't just that we've been underfed and lack training. Some of our tributes have still been strong enough to make a go of it. But we rarely get sponsors, and Haymitch is a big part of the reason why. The rich people who back tributes, either because they're betting on them or simply for bragging rights of picking a winner, expect someone classier than Haymitch to deal with. So you're supposed to give us advice, I say to Haymitch. Here's some advice. Stay alive, Haymitch said, and then bursts out laughing. I exchange a look with Peta before I remember I'm having nothing more to do with him. Surprised to see the hardness in his eyes. He generally seems so mild. That's very funny, says Peta. Suddenly he lashes out at the glass in Haymitch's hand. It shatters on the floor, sending the blood-red liquid running toward the back of the train. Only not to us. Haymitch considers this for a moment, then punches Peta in the jaw, knocking him from his chair. When he turns back to reach for the spirits, I drive my knife into the table between his hand and the bottle, barely missing his fingers. I brace myself to deflect his hit, but it doesn't come. Instead, he sits back and squints at us. Well, what's this? Did I actually get a pair of fighters this year? He said. Peta rises from the floor, scoops up a handful of ice from under the fruit tureen. He starts to raise it to the red mark on his jaw. No, says Haymitch, stopping him. Let the bruise show. The audience will think you've mixed it up with another tribute before you've even made it to the arena. That's against the rules, says Peta. Only if they catch you. That bruise will say you fought. You weren't caught. Even better. He turns to me. Can you hit anything with that knife besides a table? The bow and arrow is my weapon, but I've spent a fair amount of time throwing knives as well. Sometimes if I've wounded an animal with an arrow, it's better to get a knife into it before I approach it. I realize that if I want Haymitch's attention, this is my moment to make an impression. I yank the knife out of the table, get a grip on the blade, and then throw it into the wall across the room. I was actually just hoping to get a good, solid stick, but it lodges in the seam between two panels, making me look a lot better than I am. Sorry. Stand over here, both of you, says Haymitch, nodding to the middle of the room. We obey, and he circles us, prodding us like animals at times, checking our muscles, examining our faces. Well, you're not entirely hopeless. Seem fit, and once a stylist get a hold of you, you'll be attractive enough. PETA and I didn't question this. The Hunger Games aren't a beauty contest, but the best-looking tributes always seem to pull the most sponsors. All right, I'll make a deal with you, Haymitch said. You don't interfere with my drinking, and I'll stay sober enough to help you. But you have to do exactly what I say. It's not much of a deal, but a giant step forward from 10 minutes ago when we had no guide at all. Fine, says PETA. So help us, I say. When we get to the arena, what's the best strategy at the cornucopia for someone one thing at a time? In a few minutes, we'll be pulling into the station, Haymitch said. You'll be put in the hands of our stylists. You're not going to like what they do to you, but no matter what it is, don't resist. But no buts, don't resist, says Haymitch. He takes the bottle of spirits from the table and leaves the car. As the door swings shut behind him, the car goes dark. There are still a few lights inside, but outside it's as if night has fallen again. I realize we must be in the tunnel that runs up through the mountains into the capital. The mountains form a natural barrier between the capital and the eastern districts. It is almost impossible to enter from the east except through the tunnels. This geographical advantage was a major factor in the districts losing the war that led to my being a tribute today. Since the rebels had to scale the mountains, they were easy targets for the capital's air forces. PETA Malark and I stand in silence as the train speeds along. The tunnel goes on, and I think of the tons of rock separating me from the sky, and my chest tightens. I hate being encased in stone this way. It reminds me of the mines and my father trapped, unable to reach sunlight, buried forever in the darkness. The train finally begins to slow, and suddenly bright light floods the compartment. We can't help it. Both PETA and I run to the window to see what we've only seen on television, the capital, the ruling city of Panem. The cameras haven't lied about its grandeur. If anything, they have not quite captured the magnificence of the glistening buildings in a rainbow of hues that tower into the air. The shiny cars that roll down the wide paved streets, the oddly dressed people with bizarre hair and painted faces who have never missed a meal. All the colors seem artificial, the pinks too deep, the greens too bright, the yellows painful to the eyes, like the flat round disc of hard candy we can never afford to buy at the tiny sweet shop in District 12. The people begin to point at us eagerly as they recognize the tribute train rolling into the city. I step away from the window, sickened by their excitement, knowing they can't wait to watch us die. But PETA holds his ground, actually waving and smiling at the gawking crowd. He only stops when the train pulls into the station, blocking us from their view. He sees me staring at him and shrugs. Who knows? He says, one of them may be rich. I have misjudged him. I think of his actions since the reaping began, the friendly squeeze of my hand, his father showing up with the cookies and promising to feed Prim. Did PETA put him up to that? His tears at the station, volunteering to wash Haymitch, but then challenging him this morning when apparently the nice guy approach had failed. And now the waving at the window, already trying to win the crowd. All of the pieces are still fitting together, but I sense he has a plan for me. He hasn't accepted his death. He is already fighting hard to stay alive, which also means that kind PETA Malark, the boy who gave me bread, is fighting hard to kill me. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So I do wish all of you a happy Tuesday. And God bless all of you, and I hope you all stay safe out there.